When you look at the history of modern Africa, there's this painful, recurring story. It's a story about leaders with huge vision, about nations on the verge of taking a bold new path, and about legacies that are just violently cut short. It's a heavy topic, but one we really need to understand, so let's dig in. And it all really boils down to this one central question, a question that's echoed across the continent for decades, from the early days of independence right up to today. Why does this keep happening? It's a pattern that really demands a closer look. Just think about the names. You have Sylvanus Olympio, Togo's very first president, a man whose goal was true economic freedom from France. Then there's Murtala Mohammed in Nigeria. He was this firebrand, an anti-corruption crusader who was trying to change everything at lightning speed. And of course, Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso, an absolute revolutionary who took on neo-colonialism only to be betrayed by the person he trusted most. All the way to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, who had this grand plan to unite Africa under a single currency backed by gold. You see, this isn't just a random list of names. It's a pattern of futures that were stolen. So to really get a grip on this pattern, there's a word we need to know. It's a Swahili word, utata. It perfectly describes this cloud of controversy, this ambiguity, all the unanswered questions that hang over these events. And that's what we're going to be doing in this explainer. We're exploring the utata behind these deaths. All right, so let's rewind the clock. We're going to start back in the first decades after independence, a time filled with so much hope, but also, as it turns out, incredible danger for any leader who dared to step out of line. Let's start with Sylvanus Olympio. Now, what's so telling here is the direct line you can draw between his vision and his fate. See, for him, it wasn't enough to just have a new flag. He wanted real economic freedom. He wanted to create Togo's own currency and ditch the French-controlled system. Now, the official story, it was just a military coup. But the utata, the whispers, the questions, have always pointed to French interests, especially when you consider Togo's incredibly valuable phosphate mines. Okay. Now let's jump over to Nigeria, because the story builds from here. Look at this timeline for Murtala Mohammed. I mean, it is just breathtaking how fast everything happened. We're talking less than a year. He comes in, launches this massive war on corruption, lays out a plan to return to democracy. And this is the key part. He takes a bold stand supporting the liberation movement in Angola. That move really angered Western powers. And then, just like that, he's assassinated in a traffic jam. The Utata immediately pointed toward foreign intelligence, possibly backing the coup. So as we push forward into the 80s and 90s, things, well, they get even more intense. The stakes are higher, and the betrayals, they become deeply, brutally personal. And then there's Thomas Sankara. I mean, this guy was a total game changer. He was leading by example, selling off luxury government cars, planting millions of trees. He was all about self-sufficiency. For decades, the utata around his death was just this thick fog of rumors about betrayal. But here's the thing about Sankara's story. The utata, that cloud of suspicion, it didn't last forever. In 2022, a court finally confirmed what people had whispered about for decades. His assassination was a plot, and it involved his best friend, with help from France and the Ivory Coast. Sometimes an assassination is bigger than just one leader. Sometimes it's about killing peace itself. And that's exactly what happened in 1994. You have two presidents, from Rwanda and Burundi, flying home from peace talks meant to stop a brewing civil war. As their plane gets ready to land, a missile hits it, and both presidents are killed instantly. This one single event became the spark that lit the fuse on one of the darkest chapters in modern history. Let that number just sink in for a second. In just 100 days following that attack, nearly 1 million people were systematically murdered in the Rwandan genocide. The utata over who fired that missile still exists, but the consequences, well, they couldn't be clearer. All right, let's bring it into the 21st century. And you're going to see that while the tactics might look a little different, the core reasons behind these events, resource control, geopolitics, they stay eerily the same. So after getting rid of a dictator who'd been in power for decades, Laurent Kabila's goal was simple. Make sure the Congo's unbelievable mineral wealth actually helps the Congolese people. Then, he's shot by his own bodyguard, who was then immediately killed on the spot. I mean, how convenient is that? The key witness is just gone. The Osata here points a finger squarely at foreign powers and big mining companies who might have preferred a leader who was a little easier to control. Now, Gaddafi's plan, this was a big deal. We're not talking about some small policy change.
A single gold-backed currency for all of Africa? That was a direct shot at the entire global financial order. It was a threat to the dominance of the US dollar, and it was a massive threat to France's economic hold over huge parts of Africa. And what happens? He isn't just killed in some internal conflict. His convoy is hit by NATO jets, leading directly to his capture and death.
And look, this isn't just speculation. We don't have to guess. This quote comes directly from leaked emails from the US Secretary of State at the time. It spells it out in black and white. France was afraid that Gaddafi's gold dinar would destroy its sphere of influence. The utada here, it comes with receipts. Okay, so we've traveled through more than 50 years of history here. When you step back and look at all these stories together, what's the pattern that starts to come into focus from inside this cloud of utata? It's actually shockingly consistent, right? It goes like this. First, you get a leader who wants real, genuine sovereignty, not just a flag, but actual control over their own economy and resources. Second, they actively challenge that outside control. Third, it's almost always an internal rival who becomes the public face of the coup. But fourth, and this is the key, the shadow of foreign interests and intelligence is always looming in the background. And all of this, it leaves us with one last really big question that just hangs in the air. When these leaders are taken out, when their vision for their country is snuffed out, you have to ask yourself, who actually benefits from that? Whose interests are truly being served when an entire nation's future is violently knocked off course? That right there is the heart of the uchitada.